Inclusion is about creating this space. Belonging is, I feel, about creating the feeling.
Are you able to identify what are the biggest misconceptions that people have about belonging and engagement?
I think there are some generational differences.
In your book, you talk about 3 types of engagement.
There is I think, I feel, and I belong.
Were you or are you able to identify a factor that consistently predicts high engagement?
There are really 5 behaviors that we find inclusive leaders demonstrate that really affects engagement.
Any leader could start tomorrow just with one small behavior to change and improve belonging and engagement.
When someone says to you they don't agree, say to them, say more.
If leaders are not doing that, it's because probably the first or immediate reaction is, this person is challenging my authority.
There's something that I call the rules of engagement. How are we going to work together as a group or as 2 individuals that we can agree on?
If a company wants to increase engagement but somehow has limited resources, where should they start?
Listen and provide opportunities for people to give feedback.
Do you agree that the results from any kind of engagement survey should be shared with the teams, even if they are really bad?
Yeah, I think you should.
How can organizations then increase engagement? Is there a quick fix for it? Hello, Dr. Roz. It's a pleasure having you here on the show today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited about talking with you.
For those that don't know you yet, you present yourself in your profile as a Connectifier who helps organizations build inclusive, radical connected cultures of belonging that benefit individuals and drive business growth. Okay? And you are also author of that book that I see behind you, The Engagement Dilemma, How to Create a Culture of Belonging. So, topics like engagement, belonging, in all my career, these probably are one of the most important topics. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I need to confess you upfront, one of the most subjective topics to manage, because everyone has their own idea of what is engagement, what is belonging, and sometimes people don't align, but still needs to move forward these engagement initiatives, belonging initiatives. So I hope that today, having a specialist like you could help me and other people lost within these frameworks to understand better what we are talking about.
I hope that I'm able to give some clarity, but give people a path that they can use to figure out what it means for their organization, because it's not a one size fits all. It would be great if it was 1 + 1 = 2, but that's just not the way it works.
It never is. It never is. Yeah. Before we get into those topics, just for us to understand what happened in your life. So was there a defining moment in your career that you realized how crucial belonging and engagement is that drove you in this path?
Yeah, it's sort of there's sort of 2 paths. I'll think of it as a personal path and a professional path. The professional path was working at places through the course of my career, and I've been more opportunistic in my career, so it's been a little bumpy and sort of circuitous. So I started off working in higher education and then went to for-profit, then went to nonprofit, and then ended up back in finance. So a lot of what where I worked had a lot to do more with the opportunity than it had some, definitive career path. I didn't wake up thinking I'm going to be a chief people officer in my life. That's not sort of how it came about.
Just happened.
Yeah, it just sort of happened. So there's that professional piece on a more personal and somewhat what I'll call vulnerable level. I grew up in a household where there was some mental health issues, mostly with my mom. And so never really felt like I had a place that I could be or feel safe at home, which then led me to look for places in my life where I could feel safe and I could feel like I could connect with others. Work was sort of a stabilizing presence for me. I always knew I could go to work and it would be there and I could get things accomplished. But it really was that connection between sort of this unstable professional life, unstable personal life and this professional life that caused me to bounce around a little bit, that really got me to a place where I was thinking, how do we look for places in our lives where we feel as though we belong and we're connected to whatever's going on. And it's sort of interesting, right? Because belonging is not, there's not a one size fits all, as we were talking about in the beginning. It really is a feeling. It really is a sense of, I can bring my authentic self to work in a way that fits within the professional world that I'm in. And when those two things align, you really do get some magic. So a lot of it for me has come from my own personal and professional experiences with not finding those places.
You shared your personal view on what belonging is, that definition. Is it different from inclusion?
It is. And again, you're going to get 45 different answers from 45 different people if you ask that question. For me, yeah, it's sort of inclusion is about creating a space where people can join. It's about creating an opportunity where people can become part of whatever the group or whatever the culture is. Belonging is different because belonging really is about satisfying that internal need for valuing uniqueness and what I am and who I am and what makes me unique, as well as the ability to connect with people in an organization who have similar identity and characteristics. So inclusion is about creating this space. Belonging is, I feel, about creating the feeling. And the feeling comes from you and I recognize that I have certain identity characteristics, whether it's a woman or whether it's I'm a mom of 2 adult children or whatever, that those are unique to me. But they also, those particular characteristics and identities can help me connect with other people who are the same, who have similar identities.
And is it wrong to consider that inclusion, as you explained, is more a responsibility of the employer or the company to create that inclusive space, while the belonging comes from inside?
I think of it as a combination of both. The employer has to create a culture where people can find others like them, right? So that they can see where there are those connections. So that becomes the inclusion piece. But the individual has to be open to wanting to be a little vulnerable, to wanting to bring their unique characteristics, to wanting to bring who they are to work. It's not exactly, there's this concept of bringing your whole self to work, right? We hear it all the time, particularly in HR. And there'll be a lot of thoughts about this, I think, is that I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't think we want to bring our whole selves to work. I think that work is a place where we want to be able to express what unique characteristics we can provide for the success of ourselves in the organization. But there are boundaries and there need to be boundaries, right? If I'm having a horrible day at home and I'm trying to get the kids out the door to go to school, and I'm also trying to get the dog, and I have 45 meetings today, and I'm trying to balance these things, I can come to work and sort of feel frustrated, but I owe it to myself and to the organization to continue to do my best work at my place of business. So it's really a fine line from my perspective. So the whole self to work is yes and.
Are you able to identify what are the biggest misconceptions that people have about belonging and engagement?
I think there are some generational differences. If you are a Gen Xer, like I am here in the United States, my thought about what it means to belong to my organization is different than I think someone who is younger than I am, or who has different work experiences. So I think some of the biggest misconceptions are, first, that it's a one size fits all. That if we create a culture of belonging for someone, then we create a culture of belonging for everyone. And that gets messy, right? Because
Big misconception there.
that is a huge misconception, right? I don't necessarily want to go out for drinks after work with my colleagues, but I want to be able to sit down in the lunchroom and have lunch and talk about life and talk about work and sort of share what I want to share. I don't, for a variety of reasons, feel like going out for drinks afterwards. Does that mean that I don't want to belong to my organization or to connect with the people? No, it doesn't. It just means how that looks for me is different, which inevitably makes things really mushy and confusing. Because there is, like a lot of things when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, it is not clear cut, which is, I think, part of some of the problems that we've had with DEI initiatives. Is right. We want there to be one way in which we can apply it and that it works for everybody. But that's just not the way it is. It's just not the way it is. So I think that is the other misconception, is that there's sort of this formulaic way in which we do it, or you're supposed to do it. And that really doesn't exist.
In your book, you talk about 3 types of engagement, right?
Yes.
That's interesting. I haven't had a chance to read your book, but I would like to hear the differences between these 3 types. But I can share with you my view of engagement, and then you tell me if this is one of these 3 types. So for me, in very simple ways, I don't want very simple terms, engagement, it's that extra mile that the person is willing to give from the personal time, family time to the company. Is that fire in your eyes when you are having a dinner with a friend and the friend asks you about how is it working in your company, and you explain that with passion? That's engagement for me.
Yep. I think that's absolutely right. It is part of engagement is how much are you willing to contribute above and beyond? How much of that additional energy are you willing to put into the work that you're doing? The research that I've done and using and building on others' research is that there are 3 types. There is I think, I feel, and I belong. So I think engagement, it is that intellectual excitement you get from the work that you do. It's that feeling of my brain is really excited about whether it's putting the puzzle pieces together or doing the research or putting the widget together, doesn't matter. It's that intellectual engagement. It's the way in which you think. The I feel is that moment you walk in and you're like, this is the place that I want to be. This is the organization that really helps me bring out my best self. And the I belong is a lot of what we've just been talking about. It is that connection with the people. It is about connection with the culture. So it's slightly different than I feel. And so those are the 3 types of engagement. It's those types of engagement that leads to what you were talking about, which is this, I want to go the extra mile. I want to do that little bit more for me and for the company. So what I found was that the I feel and I belong engagement are really impacted and affected by the organization. So when the organization has a culture and has mostly what we call inclusive leadership and an inclusive culture, you can directly impact those kinds of engagements, how people feel about the work and how well they feel that they belong to the organization. The I think is different. The I think is not impacted by culture of the organization. It has no connection. What it is impacted by is the job that you hire people to do. So what I talk about in the book is how do you create both the manager experience and create inclusive leadership and teach managers how to be inclusive leaders to impact those 2 types of engagement. But how do you create your recruiting and onboarding process or talent acquisition process in order to attract the right people to the right job at the right time? And we don't do that well. At least we don't do that as well in the United States. Usually what happens is someone gives notice. Everyone goes, uh-oh, what are we going to do? We look at the job description. We say, yep, that looks right. And we post it. And then we go through some process that we use that probably has been used forever.
Right.
What I recommend is we get the note of the resignation from the person, and we take a moment and we pause. We do a couple of things. First of all, is this the right job description? Really the right job description? And you may not know it just by reading it, but you can know it by talking with the people who this person interacts with on a daily basis. What are the ways in which they engage in the organization to help the organization? What are the things that they do that are not written down in that job description, but have been acquired over the course of time and the course of years? So if we take that pause and take that moment, of looking at the job, looking at the people that it interacts with, looking at the direction of the company and where we think the company is going to go so we can really match those things up. That starts our thinking. That starts our ability to connect with people who are thinking the same way about the job that the job is. If I know what the job is and I'm able to write that up in a way that can connect to the individual that is thinking about a role in the same way, you start that, I think, engagement. You start to build that excitement. Then you create a process, a hiring process, both from a recruiting, hiring, and onboarding process that continues to intellectually stimulate as well as get to that intellectual feeling, that thinking part of engagement. So we focus a lot in general on managers. We focus a lot about how managers can create cultures of inclusivity and belonging. We have usually, because of time pressure, we focus a little less on the I thinking engagement. And that really is where we can start to build that connection with individuals coming into our organization.
Your work is done more with the leaders because the leaders will drive all these initiatives. But across industries, were you or are you able to identify a factor that consistently predicts high engagement?
When managers act and behave in ways that create inclusive environments, inclusive cultures, we see a much higher level of engagement. Because what happens is you have an opportunity for people to both contribute what they're good at to the organization, have that feeling of connection to the work that they're doing and the people that they work with. And then also be able to give that what we call additional
extra mile.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So what does that mean? There are really 5 behaviors that we find inclusive leaders demonstrate that really affects engagement. The first is looking at voices within the conversation that may not agree with whatever it is being put out there. So if we're in a meeting and I say we're going to go and I think we should do A, B, and C, and you say to me, I don't really know, Roz. If I don't pursue that, and I say, well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But really what we're going to go in this direction versus tell me a little more about why. Help me see what you see, right?
Mm-hmm.
What that does is 2 things. First of all, it gives you the space to share what it is that you're thinking and feeling, which allows you then to feel more connected in whatever the outcome is going to be. It also then sends a message to the rest of the team that it's not just about what I say, but it is about the collective in how we go about performing the duties or how we go about making the changes, whatever it is. So it gives the opportunity for people to share dissenting voices and things that they may not agree with in a way that's productive and moves things forward. Connected to that is that when you have disconnect or when you have productive conflict, you then catalyze innovation because you're saying, okay, I don't think this is the right way. So, okay, well, let's all then talk about what the best way could be, right? Because the intellect and the collective has a much better way of looking at things because their experiences contribute to the innovative concept or whatever it is they're going to move forward. The third behavior that I like to talk about is around discomfort. People in general, right? Humans as human beings don't like discomfort. Nobody likes to be cold or whatever. I mean, I'm sitting here with my heater on because I don't like to be cold. But there are opportunities in discomfort and feeling sort of unsettled that if we explore those and give people the opportunity to share it, actually makes things better because it allows and invites different ways of thinking. It allows for that diversity of thought to say, like, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good to me. How do I sit in this for a moment and be able to then take that discomfort and help move things forward, help be solutions oriented and make changes. And so there's an authenticity that we are looking for when we have inclusive leaders that really does catalyze and give people the space to be able to bring that part of themselves that may be different and help to in the creation of something new. The final one is about tackling biases. As a manager and as a leader, if I know what my own stuff is, I can be on the lookout for how it may impact the group and the individuals within the group. If you're in a group of people, what do you see coming up for you? And one of the things they mentioned was around accents, right? That there are certain accents for them that indicate levels of intelligence, which we know is not true, but it's what they recognize about themselves. And so we talked about, like, well, what do you do if you encounter a group of people and one person has that particular accent? And they talked about being able to say, okay, I need to focus in on what that person is saying, not how they're saying it. I need to focus in on the content of what they're saying versus the way in which it's being presented. And they know that about themselves. So if they are interacting with a group or facilitating some sort of conversation, they have to recognize that that's a bias that they have and how that may impact their involvement and engagement and the way in which they think about the individual with that particular accent in this.
If any leader that is listening to this conversation could start tomorrow just with one small behavior to change and improve belonging and engagement, what would that be?
When someone says to you they don't agree, or if someone says to you that they have a differing opinion, say to them, say more, help me see what you see. What that does is it invites a dialogue. It invites a conversation. It engages the person in the conversation in a way that gives them an opportunity to share either their expertise, their experience, or their perspective. It does two things. One, it brings a person into the conversation. And then if you're in a group, it allows people to see that, like, this manager really does care about what I have to say or does care about what is being said. They are trying and listening to what's going on. So I think if you ask that question, tell me more, help me see what you see, you engage the dialogue and you engage the person in such a way that you start to create this foundation that really does impact engagement.
I assume that if leaders are not doing that, it's because probably the first or immediate reaction is, this person is challenging my authority.
Correct. That's absolutely right. And if we take less of an ego approach in this, and we take more of a questioning approach, more of a, what do they see that I don't see? Less about me, more about their perspective that could be incredibly valuable. We change the dynamic. It is less about I'm right and you're wrong, and more about what don't I know or what don't we know that could help really move things forward. Very different perspective.
There's so many conversations that it always ends in status attack or challenging authorities, and protecting that unconsciously creates so many problems. And if everyone would be so more open to hear or to learn or to grow as a group, maybe many of these problems would not exist.
I think you're spot on. If we come at things from a questioning in a way that is productive, in asking the questions to move things forward, versus some sort of what can be ego-driven perspective, I think we really can change so many different dynamics and so many different ways in which groups and people work together. Now, look, time is time, and sometimes you just have to get stuff done, right? And so I'm not saying in every conversation, if you and I are talking and we've got to just accomplish this particular task, sometimes that's not the question to ask. But when you are trying to be innovative, or when you're trying to come to some decision that really does involve people and their and the organization, ask the question, what am I not seeing? Right? Tell me what you see. Help me see from your perspective. And invite discomfort for yourself or the other people. Invite the understanding as to why we want to be why we want to be uncomfortable is for the sake of moving things forward. One of the things that I should also mention, though, is in order to do this well, there's something that I call the rules of engagement, which is how are we going to work together as a group or as two individuals that we can agree upon? And so it may be that some of our rules of engagement, and we talk about this in my team, and it sounds goofy, but we raise our hands, right? There's only 4 of us, but we raise our hands. Well, why do we do that? Well, because some folks feel as though, let me take a step back. I'm a native New Yorker, and so it is very common for me to talk over people. I don't mean anything by it. It is not about the other person. It's just my excitement in like, oh my God, you just said something that resonates so strongly with me that I'm going to just want to talk about it. However, I have another member on my team that gets shut down when that happens. They feel as though they're being devalued. So how do we deal with that? Well, we raise our hands so that when I want to talk, I'm not jumping over anybody. And when they want to speak, they also have the opportunity to do so. So establishing the ways in which you're going to communicate and work together is a real foundation for creating this inclusive space. So that's another aspect of this that I would suggest is really key in an inclusive leadership or inclusive environments.
If a company wants to increase engagement but somehow has limited resources, where should they start?
There are great tools out there that you can use. Engagement surveys, I'm not going to pitch any of them in particular, but there's tons of them. Just type in engagement surveys. One of the things that they do that you can also do is listen and provide opportunities for people to give feedback. That can be an inbox in Outlook where people can provide a suggestion about things to do better. Or it can be a physical box that you've got that people put pieces of paper in, right? Real OG kind of stuff.
Anonymously,
exactly. And if you provide several different ways, whether it's a piece of paper in a box, whether it's an electronic version of that, or whether it's a listening tour where you have some senior leaders in the organization go around to different offices or different departments and say, tell me what's going on. Tell me how you're feeling about it. Yes, there's bias. Yes, people may not want to do it. But if you try different ways of collecting that information, you'll see themes, right? You'll see themes that exactly. And that's really what you're looking for. It's not about the fact that people hate the cookies in the kitchen and they want new cookies. It's about people are dissatisfied and don't feel as though they're valued. And here are the ways in which they see that coming through. So you don't have to spend a lot of money, but you have to spend time, and you have to do something about it. The worst thing any organization can do is ask for people's opinions and then let it lie. Do nothing with that information.
There needs to be an action plan to address the issues, right?
100%. Because very quickly, you will find people not giving you any more information, being completely disengaged from the process.
Right.
Yeah. So
loses the credibility.
Exactly. If you're going to do it, do something with it. Even if it is, and this is hard, even if it's coming out and saying, you know what, we had no idea people were this unhappy or that this was a problem. We're now going to take time for the executive leaders or whomever it is to really look and see what's going on and try to figure that out. And we're going to come back to you in 3 months. We're going to come back to you in 6 months. What people want is communication. They want to know that what they're expressing and what they're talking about is valuable and is being heard. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter whether it's at work or in your personal life. People want to be heard and valued, right? I mean, that's just a human nature.
Do you agree that the results from any kind of engagement survey should be shared with the teams, even if they are really bad?
Yeah, I think you should. I think We have done that here where we've gotten some feedback that was not great and really hard for us to digest here at LNW. And we went back to the organization. We said, we heard you, and here's what we're going to do about it. And then we went back to the organization as here's what we did about it, and here's what we're going to continue to do about it.
Okay.
People may not like the answer, right? They may think that we should do something differently, but you want to count on your leaders to be able to say, this is what we think is best for the people and for the organization. But at least they're sharing information with us. At least they are communicating what's going on. And that's very key in creating a culture of connection and belonging, is how are we engaging in a dialogue with the organization and with people within the organization so that folks know what's going on. So yes, I agree. You should share the results of it, good and bad.
Companies may be using cheaper tools or more expensive corporate tools to measure engagement, and then they prepare the questions, they measure, some of them act upon or not. But how, in general, how can organizations then increase engagement? Is there a quick fix for it?
I'm going to say this both from an individual and an organizational perspective. I think we, as organizations or as senior leaders of organizations, thinks that we need to fix everything in a silo, meaning that the executive team takes it away or leadership takes it away, they solve the problem, and then they implement whatever that is. People own what they help create. So if you get a result back from an employee engagement survey, good and bad, and you involve people within the organization to help solve that problem, you are going to both do two things. One, you're going to get experiences and understanding about this problem that you wouldn't have gotten if you had just taken it off into some sort of senior leadership and tried to solve the problem. But you're also going to get advocates for whatever the issue is and the solution of that issue. So by taking concerns or taking pros and cons or good and bad things that come out of your employee engagement survey, and you create, whether it's task force or groups or just listening sessions where people are involved in the solution, that really does increase employee engagement, because what that says is the organization is listening to me and what my concerns are, and they are asking for my input and help in making it better. And I mean, what a great way in which to contribute both your intellectual skills, whatever the job it is that folks have hired you for, as well as your participation and that emotional energy that you can bring.
We are close to the end. And for every guest that I have here on the show, in the end, I would like to ask the person if they could recommend me someone that I could reach out and invite to be the next guest. Who would you like to recommend?
So Celine Williams had a great conversation about crisis and leading through crisis.
Challenge accepted. Thank you for being today here in the show. And for everyone, just a reminder that I've left on the video description the links for if you want to reach out and connect with Dr. Roz, or for the book. You will find everything on the video description. Thank you.
Thank you. This was a pleasure, and I appreciate the engaging conversation. Thanks so much.
Likewise. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.